Harry Potter and the Death of the U. Written and images by S. Rube. Narration by AI Workstream. Animations by Veer AI. Harry Potter and the Death of the U. Chapter 7. The U and the Holly.
Tamaz was the first to break the silence. Not abruptly, not disrespectfully, but the way apprentices did when their minds were too full to stay quiet any longer. Leaning forward slightly, hands folded as though restraining themselves, he said,
"So, when you work a wood like you, do you shape it to the wand first, or do you let the wand decide its length before the cut?"
Ollivander did not answer immediately. He looked at Tamaz the way he always did when a question was almost right.
"You're thinking ahead. That's good. But you've skipped a step."
Tamaz frowned, thinking. Harry stayed silent, watching the exchange with the same patience he'd learned to use around people who spoke to the world differently than he did. Ollivander tapped the table once and continued.
"The wood is not shaped into a wand. It is shaped away from everything it is not."
"So the waste tells you as much as a wand itself."
"Now you're listening,"
Ollivander said while allowing himself the faintest smile. Harry glanced down at his plate just as the last traces of the meal vanished. No clatter. No warning. The plates were simply gone. In their place appeared dessert. Simple. Intentional. A shallow bowl of vanilla ice cream, pale and unadorned, set before each of them. Beside it, a slice of chocolate cake, dark, dense, the surface still faintly warm as though it had been cut moments ago. No garnish. No excess. Harry watched the ice cream for a moment before looking back up.
"When you worked the U, how did you begin?"
Ollivander's gaze shifted back to Tamaz. Not surprised. This was always where the real questions came from. He folded his hands together, the memory settling in.
"I did not cut it at first. U does not respond well to blades when it is still deciding what it wants to be. I set the log on the table and let it rest, not to season, that had already been done, but to acclimate. You must be allowed to recognize the space it will live in."
"So, you let it adjust?"
Tamaz said as his eyes widened slightly. Ollivander replied and gestured as though the table were before him again.
"Yes. The workshop carries its own magic. Old magic. You needs to feel that before it will cooperate. Only after that do you begin shaping. Slowly. By hand. No spells at first. I used a draw knife, long strokes. Always with the grain. U has a tight grain, stubborn. If you rush it, it splinters, and you will never fully remove that weakness. You shave. You rotate. You listen."
Harry listened closely now. Tamaz leaned forward, barely breathing while clinging to every word.
"The sound changes when you're close, it stops resisting. The blade moves more cleanly. That's when you know the wood is no longer fighting the idea of becoming something else. When the shape finally emerged, I set it back on the table."
Harry pictured it without effort, the hours slipping by unnoticed, the shop quiet but alive. Ollivander lifted his chin slightly.
"The phoenix watched the entire process, no noises, no interference. Once the wand form was right, the bird turned its back."
Harry's spoon rested forgotten beside the bowl now. Tamaz blinked and exhaled softly while asking what Ollivander meant about turning away.
"Yes, a sign of approval. Or at least, acceptance. That's when I began considering the core. I had barely taken 2 steps when the phoenix made a sound. Not loud. Not sharp. A reminder, polite, but firm."
Ollivander stopped walking in his memory, turning back. He glanced at Harry now, as if sharing something that still felt private even decades later.
I looked at it, and it looked at me. So I asked, "Are you giving me a feather?" Looking directly into my eyes. The phoenix nodded. Once, decisively. I approached slowly, no wand. No knife. Nothing in my hands. and I took one small feather from its back. Not pulled. Given. That is when I understood the night was no longer about craft.
The room fell very still. Harry felt the truth of it settle deep. This wasn't about wandmaking, it was about permission. Ollivander did not sit back down. The memory carried him too far for that. He remained standing at the edge of the table, one hand resting lightly against its surface, as though the wood beneath his palm anchored the night he was describing.
The feather is only the beginning. A core is not placed. It is invited. And a phoenix feather, despite what many believe, does not simply settle where you tell it to.
Harry watched Ollivander's hands now, the way his fingers moved when he spoke and drawing invisible lines in the air. Not reenacting, but recalling the exact sequence. Tamars leaned forward slightly, recognition, not confusion.
I made the incision narrow. Exact. Deep enough to receive the feather without forcing it to bend. The feather went in cleanly, and then I introduced the bonding agent. Not to dissolve the core, to dissolve distance. The agent allows the magical element to spread, to permeate the interior of the wood, rather than remain isolated within it. Another rule that even experienced wand-makers neglect.
Harry felt his grip tighten slightly on the edge of the table.
I began with dragon blood, acquired years earlier. Potent. Reactive. Frequently used by wand-makers who favor force. The phoenix did not object. However, only part of the feather dissolved enough to suggest possibility. Not enough to suggest completion. So, I adjusted the mixture, introduced additional bonding agent. Added yew shavings.
Ollivander shifted his weight and his voice sharpened slightly.
The phoenix protested. Not violently, but unmistakably. So I stopped. Immediately.
Tamars nodded, absorbing every word.
I tried molten metal next, from a knight's shield. Defensive enchantments led into the alloy during the First Wizarding War. The phoenix remained still. Again, partial dissolution. And by then, my yew shavings were nearly gone.
Ollivander exhaled slowly. Harry felt the tension rise again, the quiet corner tightening around the problem.
I attempted to proceed again with the last drop of molten metal. The phoenix objected. This time, more forcefully. I understood then I was being warned. Not corrected, warned. So, I switched to snake's blood from a Burmese python. Long-lived. Accidental consumption of a gnome. The blood carried residual magic, but not malevolence. I donated to a zoo shortly after.
Tamars's breath caught, but he said nothing. Harry's eyes sharpened as the silence pressed in.
That allowed the remainder of the feather to dissolve. But it left me with a problem. The wand was bonded internally, but unsealed. I had no yew left, and yew does not permit itself to be reshaped once it has accepted a core. To do so would risk destabilizing the entire structure.
Tamars swallowed. Ollivander lifted his gaze slightly and glanced toward Harry. Harry knew what was coming.
So I hesitated, and the phoenix intervened. It pecked, not at the wand. At the remaining shavings. From my work earlier, from woods the bird had already rejected. Holly? I asked the phoenix if it was certain. I told it this was irregular. Unprecedented. The phoenix did not hesitate. It nodded.
Tamars's eyes widened. When Ollivander said holly, it seemed to carry weight now, fully earned. Ollivander allowed himself a small breath and continued.
So, I placed a single shaving of holly into the seal. Just one small sliver. And then, the phoenix shed a tear. The single tear fell, and the seal completed. Blue smoke. Not spectacle. Confirmation. The bond accepted, cleanly. Permanently.
Harry felt it settle through him like a remembered truth. Ollivander finally sat. The room held the implication without rushing it.
And that is how a yew wand was sealed. With holly. 2 woods. 2 purposes. 1 wand. Many wizards and wand makers would say it was about necessity. But I know it was about connection.
The plates cleared themselves without ceremony. Ollivander folded his napkin once. Precisely.
We should move. This part belongs elsewhere.
Harry rose at once, offering his arm again. Ollivander accepted it with the same practical ease as before, and together they left the dining room behind. The study lay at the far end of the house. Unlike Muriel's rooms, which announced themselves through scale and accumulation, this space was restrained. Intentional. Designed by a man who valued function over impression. The walls were lined with books, but not uniformly. Some shelves sagged under the weight of centuries-old volumes, others held only a handful of thin, carefully placed texts. There were no portraits here. No watchers. A single window faced east. The desk was worn smooth by use rather than age, its surface scarred faintly by heat, ink, and the occasional careless tap of a blade. Tools rested along one edge, not displayed, not hidden. Simply ready. Harry settled into a chair opposite Ollivander as Tamars hovered near the shelves, respectful, reverent, almost afraid to breathe too loudly.
This is where I'll finish.
Tamar's gaze sharpened. He wanted to make sure he didn't miss any part of this lesson.
When the blue smoke cleared, I was satisfied. Not proud. Satisfied. The U-wand settled. Stable. Complete. And by then, the sun was coming up. I hadn't slept, not even briefly. And I was due to open the shop.
Harry glanced toward the window, already pale with the suggestion of dusk. Tamars nodded, picturing the weight of that alone. Ollivander's mouth curved faintly.
So, I thanked the bird for the lesson. For the patience. I told it I needed to rest. Of course the phoenix disagreed. It pecked my hand, not hard. But not gently either.
He lifted his fingers slightly, as though the sensation lingered even now. Harry felt it before Ollivander described it. He looked up at Harry then, meeting his eyes directly.
I told it the night was over, that the wand was complete. The argument did not last long. I asked, what was next? And the bird answered. It kicked another piece of wood, already shaped. Already waiting. Holly. 11 inches.
Tamar's hands curled into fists at his sides, eager with anticipation.
I protested, I admit. I said it was irregular. I said the pairing was finished. The phoenix responded. It rose to its full height, chin lifted. Regal. Certain.
Ollivander inclined his head, conceding even now.
So, I began again. The process was faster this time. Cleaner. The wood had already been shaped, already willing. I made the incision, and again, I was given a feather. I used the remaining snake's blood as the bonding agent. There was no hesitation. No resistance. The bond took immediately.
Harry felt the echo of it settle through him. The silence stretched. Ollivander exhaled slowly.
But I had no holly shavings left, it had been used to seal the U. I hesitated, and the bird intervened once more. It walked to the wand. Looked at it. Then at me. And then.
He glanced toward the window, as though half expecting to see it there still.
It dropped 3 tears. Into the incision, and then it flew. No ceremony. No instruction. Just gone. The wand sealed completely, blue smoke.
Harry's breath left him quietly. Ollivander leaned back in his chair now, the memory complete, the weight of it no longer pressing forward. Tamars swallowed.
When the smoke cleared, the sun was fully risen. It was the only day I never opened the shop, well at least, until I was taken, and I have never regretted it.
The room held the truth without embellishment. 2 wands. Forged not by plan, but by insistence. And Harry understood now that the story he'd been chasing was not about why his wand had acted. It was about why it had to.
I hope you enjoyed this reading of Harry Potter and the Death of the Yew, Chapter 7, The Yew and the Holly. You're invited to join us for our final week when Harry expands his journeys to see some familiar faces in Harry Potter and the Death of the Yew, Chapter 8, Flight of the Child.